Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today for this InfoReady webinar on digitizing graduate school processes. So today, this webinar is a panel webinar where we have 4 individuals from 3 institutions. So my name is Carlos Moncada. I will be your MC today on this webinar. And I'm also Director of Client Services at InfoReady. Some of you may already know me. I'm on camera today, so now you have a face with the voice if you've never seen my face before. So on the next slide, we have a list of use cases that InfoReady can be used for. So you can see they range from different parts of the institution, different type of audience. So on screen here, there's one for students and grad students. So that's not an exhaustive list by any means, because the basic functionality of the InfoReady platform allows an administrator to create a form for a collection process and then route that through a review or approval or feedback workflow. So that's pretty common in a lot of processes. So we see people adapting InfoReady for all kinds of things. So on the next slide, we have just a little housekeeping to go over the schedule and logistics for the webinar. So it's scheduled for 60 minutes. The bulk of that time is going to be Q&A with the panelists here. So we have some prepared questions in advance, and then we'll have some time for audience Q&A. So there's a Q&A button at the bottom or somewhere in your Zoom tool there. If you could type your questions in as we go, we'll be able to address those and ask the panelists those questions you submitted. One of the reasons why we use the Q&A so that everyone can see what questions have been submitted, and also we can control the chaos of not doing phones. So everyone's phones are muted. So, a couple other things. This webinar is being recorded. You may have seen that prompt when you came in. So that recording will be available on our website within the next week or so. So you'll be able to access that. We'll also do some outreach afterwards and share the webinar recording with you as well. So it's something you can share with your colleagues if they're interested. And then lastly, there's a post-webinar survey as well. So when we close this out or when you leave, you'll get a prompt on screen to fill out the survey if you'd like. And so that's all for housekeeping. Now let's go on to the main event. You're not here to see me. You're here to hear what our panelists have to say. So we have a couple panelists from Louisiana State University, Kevin Breaux and Carol Wicks. We also have a panelist from the University of Michigan, Beth Dietrich Korp. She's in the College of Literature Sciences and the Arts. That's actually where I got my degree from. So I know what LS&A stands for. And last but not least, we have Jessica Coyle with graduate school at the University of Rhode Island. I'm going to give all of them a little bit of time to introduce themselves because I know I can't do them justice. So let's just go in order from left to right on screen. Kevin.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Kevin Breaux. I am the Awards and Assistantship Coordinator here at the Graduate School at Louisiana State University. Originally from Louisiana, true Cajun, as they call us. Looking forward to today's seminar. Hope I can help you all out. And any questions you have, feel free to ask when that time comes.
I'm Carol Wicks. I'm an Associate Dean in the Graduate School at Louisiana State University. My home academic department is Geology and Geophysics. I've been in the graduate school since 2018 and at LSU since 2009. Previously from Mizzou, and before that, Virginia, and before that, Northern New York. So kind of traveled all around. And I hope that I can give you some insight into how LSU uses InfoReady. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. I'm Beth Dietrich Korp. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Graduate Education Program Manager for the College of Literature, Science, and the Arts at the University of Michigan, the Ann Arbor campus. I work primarily in the Dean's office. Part of my role is to help oversee some of our policies and procedures related to graduate students, especially application progressing through a teaching as instructor of record. But I also help oversee a recruitment event called Preview Weekend for prospective incoming graduate students to certain LSA programs. So those are two examples of what we use InfoReady for, and I'm really excited to talk with you all and address your questions today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Coyle, and I am the Executive Assistant to the Deans here at URI Graduate School. My primary focus is around graduate funding resources, especially those with fellowships, scholarships, small grants that we house here at the graduate school, as well as assist in the assistantship coordination.
Thanks, everyone. So they answered one of the questions preemptively that I had, and that's what processes are you managing in InfoReady? Does anyone want to expand on how you're using InfoReady?
Sure. So currently we have about 4 fellowship competitions that we use every year, as well as scholarships. We also have a small grant that is housed for graduate students in research groups. So we do mini grants, whether it's individual or a group project. We get competitions for those, as well as we post assistantship opportunities like jobs that we have here at the graduate school to gain applications for that process. So InfoReady has been amazing with that.
I'll add a little bit because I'm an associate dean in the graduate school. Sometimes there'll be a competition that the provost wants to run the specific graduate students, and I'll get an email, hey, can you set this up in InfoReady? And it'll be kind of a one-time thing. We have several of those that we've done. SEC Emerging Scholars, they apply through our InfoReady site. We do travel grants. Anytime a piece of paper comes across my desk and I recognize that form as the 5th or 6th time I've seen that piece of paper, I'm in InfoReady trying to figure out if I can move it. So I really look at InfoReady to get rid of a lot of paper if I possibly can.
Yeah, and I'll definitely echo what Carol said. So for me in the Dean's office here, we have 2 primary reasons that we use InfoReady, and that is our graduate students. Those who want to teach as instructor of record in our college at a 300 or 400 level need prior approval. So there's a lot of approvals that have to come from dissertation advisors, from the instructional department, as well as passing approval here in the college. So we really were able to move away from a paper PDF even application that required signatures and kind of some approval processes. InfoReady has really streamlined that process for us. But we also use it as an external application for undergraduates who are looking to study at University of Michigan and want to come take part in a small recruitment event that we hold in fall. But in addition to the Dean's office, I know we've really expanded it out to a lot of our departments and units now use it, especially for graduate students, from everything from kind of tracking on committee meeting forms to looking at capstone project requirements, to even tracking milestones, you know, at the graduate level, in addition to research awards and fellowships that are departmental.
And I'll jump on board and say that LSU here in the grad school, we have roughly 3 fellowships that we host competitions for through InfoReady. We have a grad school tuition award that we also host a competition for. And we have a distinguished dissertation award that we give out once every year. And that is for those that graduated in the year prior. In addition, other than the award side, on the assistantship side, we have several uses for InfoReady, and one of those is including additional compensation, which we allow over and above the required hours that an assistantship student works. And we also use it for evaluations at the end of each semester for the assistants. And then when an assistant happens to go on probation, we use it for probation petitions as well. So it's become very instrumental, and the process is very streamlined for us. We've gotten away from the old paper formats, trying to, I think we probably have a couple still out there, but we're trying to eventually roll over into the electronic version instead of paper.
Well, thanks everyone. So there's a variety of processes there, right? There's some common things, but there's quite a range. And so sometimes when we're talking to groups, they'll say, how do you, if you're running a lot of different processes on the same site, how do people keep it straight? Because if you have 5 different things on there, people might get confused. So how do you make sure people are getting to the right place on your InfoReady site?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will definitely say within our college, the use of InfoReady has kind of exploded in a good way. That we had one of our units who was a test case. We had actually been using InfoReady at University of Michigan more in like Michigan Med, which is our med school. And some of our other schools and colleges had been using it before College of LSA adopted it. And it started kind of small with cognitive science, and then kind of branched out to linguistics, and then branched out to the dean's office. And now I think we have 11 different departments in our college who use it. And they have some of them have at least 5 or 6 different competitions. I think psychology is our newest adopter, and they've got at least 10 different competitions focused on graduate alone that are awards. One thing we like to do definitely is remind people about naming and procedures, and trying to make sure that naming department is featured, making sure that they're selecting the correct category as well too, which is really a great feature of InfoReady, is that it can be listed by organizer and category. And so students, when they go into search for certain competitions, might be pulling up something specific that's related to committee forms or course petitions or fellowships or funding. Funding is kind of one of the general categories, right? I think that a lot of people use, but the nice thing I think about InfoReady is you can even name a specific category on your own. Like we have graduate milestones is now a category that is used. We have graduate student award and also graduate student teaching. So they're kind of different categories. So it is more descriptive of what people are looking for, so they know that they're applying to the right thing.
And for us, since we use it primarily just for funding resources, it's competition. So what helps is that we're able to launch competitions at different dates and have them end at different dates. So you can prepare the competition ahead of time, make them launch at different times. So it makes it a lot easier for us as admins to be able to implement them ahead of time and not get too confused when it's all done at the same time.
Yeah, I'll say this. I'll piggyback on what you just said and say we do the same thing. We prepare our competitions in advance and have them ready to go at a certain time, launch them, and end them at the same time. I use the copy function a lot, and the reason why I do is because in many cases the competition has not changed very much. So I use the copy function, and then I turn around and just tweak the description or tweak the dates, tweak the title a little bit, and that's really beneficial rather than having to completely start a competition from scratch. But yeah, that works really well as well. We have all of our competitions, all of our awards, all of our fellowships are all listed on the grad school website under our funding page. And there's a link that takes you directly to the homepage of InfoReady. And from there, they can pick out which particular one they want to apply for.
Great, thanks. And I want to piggyback off of that copying. in the system, you can use templates and you can copy. How has that impacted any sort of staff transitions on your end? Because a lot of times if you don't have an existing tool and you're new to your unit, you get thrown in the deep end, right? And you don't know where to start. So how has that helped you?
So that was actually my case. So our previous assistant dean left URI about a year ago, and then I took over. So it was I thought it would be a large learning curve, but the system is so user-friendly that you were able to really pick up where it left off. So I was able to reference the templates that were used, able to reference the copies, and was just testing it. And it really worked really well, especially for someone who I've never used it before, and the guides are amazing. So for me, it was an easy transition. And I like techie stuff, so it was really fun for me to learn that stuff. So I thought it was going to be very challenging, but it really wasn't. So for me, it was very simple.
I'll piggyback on that, Jessica. I was also thrown in the deep end. Well, so was Kevin. So having to be able to copy a competition that was up and running, say one of our fellowships, and really all we needed to do was change, instead of this academic year, it's going to be that academic year, was really a great baby step for us to take in the deep end. And then it was pretty easy for us to learn. With the guides were very helpful. Then we're feeling more confident about designing our own and moving forward like that. But we were also in the deep end, and we also relied on the guides and the copy function.
Great, thanks for that. So still using the kind of the copy and the templates and being able to reuse opportunities like that. How does that impact your data that you collect? And what kind of data are you collecting that you want for reporting purposes up the chain?
Well, I think that the data that we want depends on the competition that we're running. Usually on fellowships, we want to know how many applied and how many were funded. And those are pretty easy to get. And again, because Kevin works so closely, and he opens one and they can compete for it, and then he closes it, so that if they're going to reapply for the next year, they have to go into another one. So Kevin, we use the opening and the closing, or the launch dates, very, very strategically, so that we catch the reporting period that we want. We don't continually run the competitions. The GA evaluations, again, they're open for your evaluation for fall as opposed to spring, so that we're always using those launch dates on the period where we actually want to be able to report. There might be more elegant ways to do it, but that's kind of working for us right now. So that's kind of how we handle that. And then reporting is, I know, Kevin, it's usually numbers, how many were awarded, how many evaluations were done, as opposed to how many GAs we have. And those are usually not the same number at all. Those kinds of things.
It's getting better.
Yeah, it's getting better.
Yeah, we use the same type of reporting system. Nothing intricate, which I think probably InfoReady can do. I just haven't had the chance to explore it. But the deans have only asked for basic information like applications, how many submitted, how many declined, and how many in draft mode. But
yeah, I echo the same thing. So largely the one interesting competition that we're looking at, especially, is our external one that is for that preview weekend event. So we're looking to and using it to even reach out to students who may have started an application to encourage them to apply as well too, if it's nearing deadline. So that's the nice thing, is kind of looking and seeing the last time they were in or kind of working on the application. So we can kind of download that information and do a connection point with those students to encourage them to apply. So that's one of the things that we're also pulling in reports.
Yeah, one of the things I like about the system also is that you can as you said, you can go in and periodically check and see if you have 3 reviewers in the routing process. You can periodically go in and check and see how many of those reviews have been done. If you've got somebody that's lagging behind and they haven't done it, you can actually hit a button and just resend that notification back out to them again manually. We have our system set up to notify reviewers on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings. But in between that time, if somebody calls and say, hey, I've misplaced the email, we can hit a send button. But the beauty is that we can go in, we can check and see the progress of a particular application or competition or whatever portal it is, and speed the process up if we need to. Make a phone call, send an email, and letting them know, hey, you've got a review that needs to be done. We need it done. The other thing too, I was going to say, and you probably haven't gotten to this, Carlos, yet, but we use the download of the spreadsheets pretty heavily in saving that information for auditing purposes in the event that the state decides to audit us. So it's really helpful. When a student, if we send a competition, we have a competition and we award a particular student, we ask for an acceptance of that award. We keep those letters. They come back through the InfoReady system. We keep those letters on file electronically for auditing purposes. So the system really works very well in terms of communication. Yep.
And I think another exciting thing too is that I've had a handful of instances where the advisor was unable to upload a document, so they sent it to me to upload. So we're able to do by proxy, submit things, which I thought was really awesome, simple to do, so we can help our staff who are having difficulties.
Yeah. One topic Kevin raised here was with reviewers, right? And that's a major benefit of the system, being able to set up your workflow for the review process. You're working with dozens and dozens of disciplines, so your audience for reviewers is really big. How do you manage your reviewers? I'm sure there's lots of personalities in there and lots of different ways departments want to do things.
For us, we have a rubric that's posted on the InfoReady and also is attached in the notification to the reviewers. Like, this is a rubric that you should be following. We have a ranking system, 1 through 10, that they're able to select based on the rubric. So that helps guide the discussion. There's also an option in there for them to write in any comments that they would like, either comments to the applicant themselves or to the administrator, which is us in the dean's office. So there is some flexibility there. We also compare the rankings and then go back and revisit, like, there's a big gap. I need you guys to revisit this, discuss this. And then sometimes they change or they weren't clarified or something just didn't make sense to them. So that's how it's worked here.
I would say we do very similar processing with our reviewers. There's a rubric 1 through 10. They can send comments to the applicant or send comments to the administrator. It's really helpful. And then the resend the notification that you're lagging on your reviews is really a useful button.
I'll say for us, the one really thing, sometimes it's hard. You feel like you are kind of tracking down reviewers sometimes. I will say, especially with our, one application that we have, the nice thing is also setting the deadline so that there is a deadline in which they have to review by, which you can go in and alter and change if they don't meet that deadline as well too, which has happened in the past. Or I just could mention that proxy upload, which has really been helpful as well too. Before using InfoReady, I used another third-party application software elsewhere on campus, which was a little trickier to use to do proxy uploads and approvals. I would say InfoReady is much easier in that process to do that, especially when we do have faculty who, you know, would prefer just to do a lazy approval of just saying, I approve this, I've reviewed it, can you just, I don't want to go into the system and kind of do it. We still try to funnel and encourage them to do that with few exceptions. But ultimately, I think a lot of the feedback we've had from our faculty is that it is pretty easy because that digest, they do get a digest emailed to them that tells them all the reviews that they have to do. So if they're not just a reviewer for one application, but maybe multiple competitions, whether in their department or here in the dean's office, they know specifically which ones they have to do, which ones are outstanding, which we've heard feedback has been really helpful for them.
Yeah, I'll also say that there's a couple of other, you know, I have different scenarios where, give you some examples. Say an application gets put in and an email address. Carol and I were talking about this a little earlier. An email address gets put in incorrectly, and so that reviewer never gets the email. And it's not until a certain point in time when we realize, hey, there's a problem, and we figure out that's the problem. Well, we can go in, we can change that, rather than wait on the department to make an attempt at changing it. We can go in and change it and fix that for them, and then hit the send button out. We also have situations sometimes where, you know, we have a committee on the graduate council that it's the awards committee, and they're the ones that we send the applications to for review and for rating the individual applications. I might get a particular professor that says, hey, there's no way that I can do this many reviews in this amount of time. Well, we have the power to go in and review that, take that reviewer out and reassign it to other people, which is a great part of the system also. So I guess my point is that we can go in and make changes to the application, even though the application is put in. It's not written in stone. We can go in and we can make changes on the fly. It's great.
Sure beats chasing people down, doesn't it? So I heard people say approvals. I heard people say a rating 1 to 10. Do you ever manage committee reviews with the system? If so, how do you do it?
That's a really great question. So for our external application, we do have a committee. So it is multiple people who are reviewing to determine, you know, is this not just eligibility of the applicant for the program, but also the strength of the applicant, right? So kind of looking at kind of who they want to invite, because these are also kind of limited spots. We also we use that rating as well too, to also take an aggregate of what those ratings are, to kind of look at an average rating. But we also compare that against, we ask them to also include comments, so that we can actually discuss those who might be kind of maybe rated lower by one committee member, rated higher by another, that if this is an applicant we want to go back and take a look at, we're able to reach out and kind of ask the committee to kind of reevaluate or relook at the application before making a decision as well too. So the ability to not just do ratings, but to have both the ratings and comments in that regard is very helpful in kind of making decisions. And then also kind of, you're able to share the committee scores. That's an option. So they can also see their committee members' comments and their ratings as well too, which allows them to maybe take into consideration, you know, not to bias, but also they can see kind of where their colleagues are thinking, so that you might not have to pull everyone together for a meeting. They can just kind of discuss it across the application itself.
I think we do something very similar, and I'll just add what we like sometimes is we'll have an award pool for a fellowship, and we'll end up with a tie, and then we can go in and we actually at that point send it to we send it to the chair, maybe the vice chair of our graduate council, who serves as the yet another reviewer in tiebreaker effectively. So we like that ability, along with the ranking and the average and the high score and the low score and the comments, all of that. It's very useful on a tie break also.
That's a great point, and I never thought about that before, because you can always add another reviewer at any time, and I never thought about, oh, we need a tiebreaker. Let's add another reviewer. So I've been with InfoReady for 8 years, and I've never had that thought.
And it never fails. Every competition that I've done every year, we've got a tie. It always happens.
Oh, simple and elegant. So about approvals, there's a feature in the system called applicant-driven routing steps that a lot of people use to collect approvals. Is that how you use it? If not, how do you go about collecting approvals?
I'm not sure I heard the question.
There's a feature in the system called applicant-driven routing steps. And do you use that to facilitate the collection of approvals? And if not, how do you collect approvals?
Yeah, Carol, if you'd like, I'll handle that one. Yeah, we on the competitions, depending on the competition, we might have 2, 3 different reviewers that will go in and give their approval, and they also have a section where they can make comments as well. Probably the evaluation process is probably the easiest one for me to explain for graduate assistantships. Basically, the way the routing works on that is the applicant, which is typically somebody within the department, puts the application in on behalf of the GA. It gets routed to the supervisor of that particular student, and then it gets routed to the academic grad advisor. And they have very specific questions as to what they have to answer. Once they answer that question, they also have the option of going in and putting a comment in. So yeah, we definitely use the routing process on everything that we do. I don't think there's a competition or a portal that we develop or work that does not have some sort of routing process. Now, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 people, it just depends on the particular portal. Does that answer your question?
So our routing is more of everyone at once. So we have like our committee, they all review it. It's not in an approval process, like A doesn't have to go before B. It's all, everyone gets the same applications at once and reviews them. And again, with the deadline, but that's been working really well. You're able to set up how many ranking questions you want them each to answer. And then they just submit it, and honestly, it works really, really well. And the cool part is that they get the instant email with all of the applications that are assigned to them. So they're able to refer back to that email in case they don't remember how to review those applications in InfoReady. So it's a good little tip for them.
Yeah, I would say one unique thing for us is with the external applications, because we have multiple departments who are taking part in our preview weekend, we give them the authority, right, to kind of review the applications and decide. We do the general approval for, are they eligible for the program? But that's the first step in the routing process, right, is we have to go and review. Once we hit approve that these are eligible, then they are pushed out to the different reviewers. And so every department has a different number of reviewers, have different types of reviewers. Some are like, it's 1 person. Some departments are like, we want 3 people to look at this. So you can be as nuanced as you want to be, I think, with InfoReady, which is great, or you can simplify the process as much as you need to. Like Jessica was saying, we just kind of have a pool, and that's reviews. Now, our grad students teaching as instructor of record, all those reviewers differ because it depends on who their dissertation advisor is. It depends on if they need a faculty mentor or supervisor. It depends on who the instructional department contact is. So we build that into the application, that the student provides the email address for each one of those reviewers. And we actually have some branching logic in there, depending on the type of application they're submitting, depends on the type and number of reviewers and steps that the review process will take.
Yeah, let me clarify also, I probably should have said this, that our competitions for awards and fellowships, we have 3 reviewers typically for all of those, and they all get the reviews at the same time, Jessica, like you were mentioning. The other items that we use, the probation petitions, the evaluations, those things for grad assistants, those use the routing process, one step at a time.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, different types of processes require slightly different workflow. You don't want everyone to see needing to provide an approval when it's not their turn. That's for sure. So I have more questions. We can go so many different ways here because we also have several questions that have been submitted. One question that I think is relevant to everyone. This InfoReady has a feature called progress reports, and progress reports allow you to assign follow-up forms to applicants to collect outcomes, impacts, any follow-up information from them. Are you using it, and how are you using it?
So we haven't used it yet. We're going to be using it starting this fall, actually, for our grad students teaching as instructor of record. One of the things that we ask them to complete is a midterm student feedback, that they have that done with a unit here on our campus, have a classroom observation. They're supposed to then report that to us. We had not included that as part of our InfoReady application yet. And so starting in fall 2023, that's something we're building into that next application, is having them do a progress report partway through to report to us and provide that information to us. Before, we were asking them just to email us and send it to us. And so that wasn't really kind of part of the whole application in and of itself. So that's something new that we're going to be using just to kind of do that touch base, that follow up. It also will take it out of our hands of remembering how many students, right, who we have specifically to reach out to or who hasn't connected with us yet, and doing that follow up. So that's a really great thing that we're going to be introducing starting this fall.
I'll try to answer for LSU, and then Kevin can correct me. I don't think we've used it much, but I think it's also a feature. We have some fellowships where we want annual progress reports, and we're basically trying to remember who to send emails to and who we got the email back from, and did we get the report or not. I think it could really help us with some of those similar follow-up items. And we wouldn't need to use it for all of our competitions at all. It's just the ones where we need that follow-up. So I think that's why we haven't maybe used it before, because it would be so targeted on maybe 2 of our competitions where we actually have to get follow-up, as opposed to the bulk of them where it's just sort of one shot. But Kevin can correct me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're absolutely right, Carol. Beth, thank you for suggesting that, because actually now that you mention it, it's really a good benefit, because every year we do have 2 particular fellowships that we require progress reports, and they generally go directly to the dean's office. Well, this would be great because we could do it through the InfoReady. We could actually request it through the InfoReady system, and they would get notification of it. They could submit it through the InfoReady system, and then we can submit it to the dean's office from there. So yeah, it's definitely something I want to look into.
As well as us. So we have a small grant that we offer to students who are in a research group. So with that funds, we want to make sure that they A, have used it, B, can you provide us your receipts? Because they have a limited time. I think it's about one actual year to use it. So it'd be nice to see, what did you use it for? Did you have to change what your proposal was? So I think that's something we've definitely discussed in the dean's office, to be able to accommodate and calculate and be able to find out what monies were used.
Here's a tip for all of you. You can enable progress reports long after that opportunity closed. So if you want to go back a couple of years and add it in, you'll be able to do so.
Yeah, I saw that when I was snooping around the other day.
Yeah, it's really helpful. And you can add as many reminders as you want. It's kind of like set it and forget it. That old rotisserie chicken commercial. I can't remember the name of the kitchen gadget. Cool. All right. So a question we get all the time is, how can I use InfoReady to manage nominations? And so I put this to you because I saw the list of people who are on here, and I know some of them have asked me that in the past, how to use InfoReady to manage nominations.
So we get a lot of nominations. We started last year with actually allowing self-nominations for students for 2 fellowships awards that we have, and also just faculty nominations. One of the ways that we were able to do, or at least identify them, was adding a question, a custom question, asking the applicant, are you a self-nominator, faculty nomination, or college dean nomination? So we were able to break that down and separate the applications based on the entries that we've gotten. And also the awesome part is that you can put as much as you want in the description. So our description actually matches exactly what our website has, and you can add links. So it matches and gives them exactly what we're looking for as far as nominations. But we do have specific ones that are only from faculty. And the ones that are student self-nominations, where they're able to enter in who they want their reference letters to come from. So you're able to add in their email, so that way they get an email here, upload the document that you need.
All of our nominations are either department driven or college driven. We don't currently have any particular fellowships or awards where we allow the applicant to apply directly on their own. But it's a possibility.
It's, yeah. Here's information about a new feature coming out a month and a half or so. Month and a half, 2 months, something like that. We have a new form builder coming out, and the early adopters have been testing out new methods of handling nominations and this free form template. And they've been very pleased with it. So we'll have a webinar at some time in the next 6 to 8 weeks where we'll show everyone what it looks like. So keep your eyes out for InfoReady emails about that webinar. Okay, this is the last question before we move on to the audience Q&A. This is a curveball. No, this second to last question. What do you wish you could do in InfoReady?
As far as like a feature that InfoReady that we want, or is it like what we want to implement as a college to use InfoReady as?
Either.
Okay. For me, it would be having the option to add a waitlist notification. I don't know if that, maybe I haven't found it, but there are times where some of our fellowships, we have a wait list and we have to use the rejection notice and kind of customize that letter. But it would be nice to do a wait list option, unless that already exists.
And again, I will add, unless it already exists and I haven't found it, sometimes when we're doing those sequential approvals, actually, if there's a no any step along the way, it's a no. So I would like a send back as opposed to like, and maybe I just don't know how to do it yet, but that would be useful to me every once in a while.
Yeah, I would kind of echo that too. I think, so one of the things sometimes when we get applications in, we've turned off the feature for automatically accept, before in the past so that we can send back, but then that kind of slows down the process a little bit. So I would echo Carol on that too, because sometimes we have students, especially for our teaching as instructor of record application, they select the wrong application in the past. We are one of the early adopters of the free form. So I can say that the new platform has kind of changed. Before, we used to do a multi-track competition for this because there were 2 different ways to do it. There still is a little confusion sometimes with students of which one to select. So we've been kind of taking that, but it'd be easier than to just reject, because right now the option is to award or reject the application. It'd be great to have that feature to send it back and ask them to alter the application a little bit versus starting a new application.
Yeah, Beth, I agree with that. That would be a benefit too. Carlos, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Many times we'll have, like I mentioned earlier, a department has an incorrect piece of information in an application, and they said they don't know how to correct it. Is it possible for a department to even correct an application, or is that something that we have to do on our end all the time? Because if so, it'd be beneficial, rather than rejecting it altogether, have a send back button, as Carol suggested, where the application would remain open. It can be sent back. They can correct it and send it back to us.
You can return applications for edits anytime prior to it being accepted into the review process.
I follow.
I gotta find that button.
So there's an accept return option. Of course, it's limited to like a place in the process.
Mm-hmm.
One way I've seen folks address this is by adding another routing step and assigning the applicant to be the reviewer in that routing step, so you can collect the additional information. Or it could be a file upload if you just say, hey, upload a file, or you could have specific questions in there. And then they're a reviewer on their own application. You keep the version history of the original application plus the additional information, and then you can just have the subsequent routing steps after that. So that's a way to go about it. Okay, time for the audience Q&A. Here's one. I think I might have to take this one. It says, can InfoReady integrate with student databases so that students might enter their unique ID number and then have the data pulled in into InfoReady with their name, their program, etc. So we do have integrations, both inbound and outbound of InfoReady. I don't think anyone on this call has one of those integrations. So we can integrate with Banner, PeopleSoft, whatever you might have on campus to pull in data up front, and it will be in, that information will display in a box on screen, and it can't be edited, right? So it's a system of record data that no one can alter. Similarly, any data you collect in the system, we could set up an outbound data feed to go to your system of record and then auto-populate it that way. So, we definitely have several institutions that have set that up, and it's not doing double data entry or the risk of typing in errors. Like it can be a big deal. Okay. Next question. So here's a question, like a before and after question. Have any of you used another platform, I think Beth has, to manage fellowships and funding competitions? What was the migration process to InfoReady like for you?
Well, I'll answer for LSU. We were, both Kevin and I, when we got to the grad school, we had InfoReady, so we can't really give insight to that.
The graduate school, we used Google Forms, which, it worked, it did what it had to do, but it wasn't as intricate and as detailed as InfoReady is.
Yeah, so before I came to the Dean's office, we weren't using anything here, but another unit on campus where I was working at the International Institute, we were using a different application software, third party, used to be called Fluid Review, now it's SurveyMonkey Apply. The unit is still using that system from what I know. But I can say, having been a user in that system and in InfoReady, I find InfoReady much easier to build in. It's more user-friendly. I think the capabilities are better as well too. The processes we had for the 2 competitions that I'm helping administer here, one was a Google form, kind of like what Jessica was using prior, across multiple departments. And we wanted to create a centralized application that looked a little more professional, especially because we were asking students to apply with information like GPA, to provide their transcripts, etc., something that was a little bit more secure. And in addition, the other competition was paper, and then I tried to move that to at least a PDF for signatures. And then honestly, we started using InfoReady January 2020, so just before the pandemic hit. And I would say that a lot of our departments kind of moved real quickly into adopting it. For that reason, was it just made the process of moving from paper to a system much easier. Because before, what I kept hearing is when you're doing things by email or by paper, you're tracking down pieces of the applications. You're trying to track on who has submitted approvals versus a system where everything is put together for you. So the integration of previous systems, we had to kind of do a before and now an after, right? We have to kind of, we've kept an archive of all of those prior applications in a file in a shared drive through our university system. But now that we have everything InfoReady forward, we just have an InfoReady folder. And the nice thing is we can pull everything down. Like Kevin was saying before, you can generate a report, you can download it as an Excel file. It's very, very helpful and makes it much easier, because before we were going in and we were entering in and tracking into like a spreadsheet every time and updating that. Versus just being able to generate reports. It's so much easier than hand typing in all that information and transferring it over.
Forgot I was muted. Normally it happens all the time. Okay, thanks for your answers there. Here's one about asking about support and service. So in your experience, how much of the internal support are you handling versus InfoReady doing the support? I'm kind of paraphrasing the question here. So question is, how much internal support are you doing versus those questions going to InfoReady?
Mostly it's all internal. I handle a lot of that, and I reference the guides. And I'm telling you, the guides are awesome. They're really like walk you through, and you can find what you need. I haven't had to contact InfoReady directly, so that's a plus. But yes, I've been handling it internally.
Yeah, on my end, I handle it primarily by myself with the applicant directly. There are, on occasion, we do have a department here on campus that uses a different email extension that has caused a few problems before in the past, but InfoReady has been very supportive in merging those emails. So I just pick the phone up and call, or I email around the InfoReady support. They merged that particular email, and that solves the problem for that particular applicant. But for the most part, yeah, I handle everything internally.
Yeah, so here in the College of LSA, myself and another colleague, we actually are the contacts of the college. So for those who are looking, who want to create their own, subsites like underneath the College of LSA. So for departments who want to actually explore using the system, need to reach out to us first and kind of talk with us to get those sites approved. I am more than willing, to tell any of my colleagues, I've been using it for a while now. So if you have questions, if you want like a a mini training as you're getting set up. But the nice thing I would say about the customer service with InfoReady, having used the different application software, is much more responsive, much more hands-on, much more responsive to emails. The fact that InfoReady is willing to meet with any new user and kind of go over some basics, but to also better understand why you're using the system and kind of how they can help you utilize the system for what you want to do, I think has just been miles above my previous experience. So I always feel like I'm a big fan of telling people to reach out to, you know, Carlos and his team, like, you know, to their reps, their contacts, you know, and if only if they're having a major issue, right, where they can't access the system, it's something I can't help with. Do I recommend someone saying, you know, this is beyond me, and submitting a ticket to InfoReady is probably where you need to go. But every time I've referred someone to do that, you know, they've said that they've gotten a really quick turnaround time, and they've been very helpful. So
I'll add from this side, we strive to provide an initial response to emails within the hour during business hours, of course. But and you know, we have some great training modules, and we do 1 or 2 monthly training webinars as well. We know there's been a lot of turnover out there since the pandemic began, and we decided to crank up the number of training webinars we do because of that. All right, we're down to just a couple minutes left. One more question, and then we got to close it out. So my question from this Q&A list, are you using InfoReady for registrar or academic forms and processes?
I'll field that one. That's actually next on my desk. We've kind of been asked to look at some of those processes that are still heavily PDF, heavily email, to see if we have the functionality with InfoReady to move it. And that's like that routing sequence is 7 or 8 steps, and some of those steps are committees. So I'm having to dig deep. Not yet, but it's on my desk.
All right, thanks, Carol. Oh, Beth.
I'll say, so we're not using anything, you know, in terms of more like registrar, but I know that there definitely are units within the college who are using it definitely to track things like milestones. So things that then have to be attached to part of, we have a Rackham Graduate School here that have to go over and be part of forms there. And it's actually just kind of streamlining that process of trying to then incorporate that into our other systems as well too. It's definitely a functionality I think that we're interested in exploring, but mostly committee forms, course petitions. There's some course petition forms I think that our college is using it for, but our registrar's office, not quite yet.
Great, thanks so much. We've got 1 minute left. And so I want to give a big thank you to all of our panelists today. You've been wonderful. If you don't mind, there were couple other questions. I'll share those with you offline as well. Maybe we can get some replies to those people who submitted that. We have some webinars coming up. Next month, we have a webinar in conjunction with Ex Libris, or I guess Clarivate now, to talk about the Pivot RP and InfoReady integration. So if you're doing limited submissions, it's a great combo for that. And then next month, after that, we have, I was talking about Freeform, we have a webinar to go over the Freeform template as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that. We're gonna have tons of other content and communication about that Freeform template as well. So it's not limited to this webinar. If you have any follow-up questions, you can contact Max Dinerman if you're interested in using InfoReady, or you can contact myself or the support team if you're already using InfoReady, or if your campus has InfoReady, you want to know more information. So that's it. I think we're done. We're at 2 o'clock. Thank you all for spending this hour with us. Hopefully it was helpful, and have a great week.
You too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it.